Hello everyone and welcome to Buidl Radio. This is a Ukrainian community fork of Buidl in UA, and today is end of October 2022, and we are a podcast that will talk to technical people, do a deep dives into different technical topics, trying to figure out all the nitty-gritty details of technical implementations of protocols, zero-knowledge proofs, and all the other different things like that. And today with you hosts is myself. My name is Polina, and I'm working on decentralized storage network called OnMachina. I have technical expertise in blockchain, and I've been here for, maybe soon to be 10 years, I guess. And my co-host is Andrei. Andrei, please tell something about yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrei Sobel. I'm also have very big expertise in the crypto sphere. Maybe I'm also spent it here 10 years, maybe more. Right now I am the protocol designer in the Metro Labs. And today we talk with Gleb Naumenko. Hi Gleb, how are you?
Hey, yeah, good. I guess I'm supposed to introduce myself. I've been working on Bitcoin for 5 years and built some local cryptocurrency exchanges before that, and that was my first real job. So I'm not that experienced as you guys, but I hope I have something to share and something interesting to tell our listeners.
How you joined Bitcoin? I mean, how it was?
Oh well, my first project in the ecosystem was a local exchange, and I was in the third year of my studies in Ukraine, studying computer science, and they just asked my classmate basically what he's gonna do over the summer, and he said, "Oh, there is this weird cryptocurrency company doing something. Do you want to join me?" So that's how the exchange was my first real project. Basically, I didn't know how to code in production pretty much. And Bitcoin happened 2 years after that. I went to do master degree in computer science in Canada, and that's where I started looking into the Bitcoin protocol, the way it actually works, and at the base layer, basically, not building an app on top of it, but the system itself. And that's how I started, trying to figure out how to make it better. That was 2017, so it's gonna be 5 years soon in the Bitcoin itself.
I know that you more or less focused on peer-to-peer network in the Bitcoin. Can you please explain a little bit more why it's important, why you especially focus on this part of the protocol?
The Bitcoin network is at least 100,000 of nodes talking to each other and sending transactions and blocks and all the related stuff. I'm saying at least because many nodes are private and operate under the hood, and we don't know about them, and it's really hard to measure how many, but it's a big network. And I'm usually saying that it's either Bitcoin enthusiasts or businesses who run the nodes because they wanna make their experience smooth. They wanna make sure that the network is not centralized and it's not only cloud machines running it, but regular Bitcoiners too. The node helps you to verify transactions and blocks and transmit them to the network. So it's a kind of crucial part of the Bitcoin as a project, because I mean, even in the white paper, this is very highlighted, the fact that there is this flat network where everyone can submit a transaction and send to each other. Honestly, I started working on it because it was the most obvious research problem to me, trying to see this big graph of hundreds of thousands of nodes and seeing how they communicate and improve that. So it was a very natural research project, unlike, I don't know, changing proof of work or changing other aspects of Bitcoin. So that's how I started, and it's been pretty cool. I came up with a couple cool ideas. Everybody liked them. Since then, I'm trying different things, but yeah, that was working on the peer-to-peer was mostly a research interest in first.
How many people, by the way, for now working on the similar things, especially peer-to-peer networking in Bitcoin, and in general, how many people contribute to the core of Bitcoin?
I would say Bitcoin core is about around 40 people doing this consistently, looking at the code every day or every week and sharing their opinions, saying that this code upgrade is good or bad, or trying to change something. So that's about 40 people. There is probably 100 people who do this on a monthly basis, so at least several times a month. And then there is many more people who either just audit the code but never share their opinion, just sitting offline and reading what's in the upgrade, and then if something really bad happens, they will raise their voice, but mostly just sitting passively or learning or thinking about problems, but not coming out with a solution yet. So I would say that's the ballpark numbers. Yeah.
Many years ago, in the end of October, in the last day of October, it's like only one guy, which we call for now Satoshi Nakamoto. He published the white paper. Is it really a revolution? What do you think?
Well, first of all, we're not sure if that's one person or many people hiding under the name, but yeah, let's focus on the fact of publishing it. Honestly, I started Bitcoin as a research project first, and the ideology, the politics behind Bitcoin, the way it changes the society and stuff is only coming right now, like over the last couple of months. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert in following the previous ideas how to change the money and make it more fair or more reasonable, decentralized money than that came before Bitcoin. I know, well, people appreciate it. It is definitely something different, something I never thought about. It looks pretty cool from what I know. It's quite original in a way, but yeah, I'm probably not the right person. I think Bitcoin is as cool as probably as the internet. So that's the comparison comes to my mind.
Okay, but can you maybe tell a little bit more what was the revolutionary that Bitcoin brought to life? And was there something similar to Bitcoin maybe before Bitcoin? And like, why did it change the world so much since 2008?
To me, it seems like Bitcoin is a combination of Wei Dai's proposal. What is it? Is it Be Money, right? Yeah, Be Money by Wei Dai, where he suggested how to track these shared accounts and transfer the transfer value across many people. But then the Adam Back's Hashcash proposal comes and helps with proven issuance and with ordering transactions and solving the double spend problem. So I think those two big ideas combined into one was Bitcoin. I know there are other projects. I know there's something called BitGold. I'm not super familiar with that history yet. As I said, I'm only catching up, and right now I'm going through related political stuff of the previous century. So I'm only arriving to the point where technology comes and solves these big questions to the society.
All right, then let's talk about Bitcoin some more. So can you just tell a little bit like how the timestamp server works? Like what is the blockchain technology and things like that? Just a little bit deep dive.
Well, assuming we know how to track each other's accounts, let's say we have some form of a ledger where I know that you own some money and I own some money and whatever, and I want to transfer some to you. Here comes the problem. How to make sure that everybody stays on the same page consistently. And that's basically the double spend problem. So that I cannot spend from my ledger towards two different directions, because it's all the information over the internet. I can send one transaction to you and one transaction to my neighbor. And if I'm spending the same money twice, that's basically printing more, and that's not gonna work. You gotta make sure that every coin is spent only one time. So that's where one of Bitcoin's innovation come in. It's how to timestamp the transactions, or in other words, how to make sure everybody's on the same page consistently. What happens is that Bitcoin miners solve this problem of hashing so that every 10 minutes a block of transactions is issued, so that everybody in the network can agree on what's the latest state as it goes to around 10 minutes. Before the block is issued, you're not really sure that you received the money, but that's where you start getting sure, and then other miners building blocks on top of that block. So that's how the history is preserved. So that's basically the solution to the double spend problem.
Okay, and how do they reach consensus? How does that work?
I think it's kind of nuanced. If you're strictly speaking, Bitcoin never reaches absolute finality, because all the time you can see some parallel chain of blocks with more work, and your node will switch to another chain. So even if you receive 10 blocks, you are not sure that this is final, that somebody can still double spend you. But the game theory of Bitcoin, the economics of mining, just encourages all the miners to continue increasing the chain instead of doing something in parallel and trying to double spend. So it's really a pretty cool innovation. It's not there is no it's I don't know, probabilistic if you wish, but the incentives behind the system work out pretty cool so far, and it seems like many people still prefer this over alternative ideas.
You said that the block cannot be finalized, like in probability of 100%. What do you think? Is it feature or is it bug?
Nothing immediately comes to my mind that this is an advantage. I would say it might be just there is no better way. If you try to achieve 100% finality, then you're gonna trade off something different. You're gonna lose security or, I don't know, anonymity. So it is probably just an obstacle, which in the end is just optimal solution overall, or not. But that's how I feel when I work on Bitcoin, and not something different. So nothing comes to my mind saying that this feature itself might be useful.
We didn't touch deeply how exactly proof of work works. What does it mean, proof of work?
Well, as we mentioned before, the problem is agreeing on the state every 10 minutes. Bitcoin does this by asking miners, or just asking somebody to produce a block of transactions. What if everybody were to produce a block of transactions? The network would be spammed with these blocks, and everybody will just mine their own, and it's going to be hard to reach consensus on, because the nodes will have to constantly verify transactions and unsure which block to choose. So Satoshi suggested to attach proof of work to a block. Proof of work meaning the computer which produces a block has to prove that it put some effort into creating it. So what happens is that after creating a so-called block template, which is just a certain number of transactions in an ordered way, miners attach some random number to the block and hash it. If the hash follows this a certain rule, for example, in Bitcoin there is, I think it's trailing bits. There is 20 trailing bits in the end of the hash. Then the block is valid, and everybody in the network will take it. If there is fewer than such number, then you have to change the random number and hash it again. So you do this many, many times until you hit the target, and then the block is valid and everybody in the network can verify that this is not a spammy block, but something real. So this is the only way, this is how Bitcoin solves this spam problem.
Miners should be incentivized to actually mine the block. So can you talk a little bit about transaction fees?
To work, this procedure should cost something, because solving spam, it's proof of work, so some work actually has to be put in place. To incentivize miners to do the work, they get a reward. Every block has a so-called coin-based transaction, which pays out to a miner. Coin-based transaction consists of two parts. It's fees. All the transactions included in this block has some money reserved to pay out to the miner which mined it. So every time I submit a transaction spending $10 to the network, I can attach $1 of going to fees, so that a miner, when they see it in the network, they take it and actually include it in the block template. So that's one part. The other part is block subsidy. It's emission of Bitcoin, just printing additional Bitcoin out of nowhere according to the predefined schedule by Satoshi. I think it's right now, is it six something, right? I'm not, I always forget what's the current subsidy. So every 10 minutes, every miner which mines a given block gets some extra flat subsidy to encourage mining, even if there is no fees or fees are not sufficient. This Satoshi made this to bootstrap the network, to help to give it some security, I guess, even while the fees are not high enough. Well, it's again, it's another nuanced topic, but I hope some of you will read more about it after listening to this episode.
Yeah, should the Bitcoin be finalized at about 2020 according to the white paper? I think the point of there's a going first advantage. So if you're the first one to mine the block, you have the huge rewards, and with time rewards shrink and shrink. So technically, if you mine the last block, you receive so little Bitcoin, it doesn't matter, and then eventually you shouldn't receive it at all, right? So what's the idea behind that? How that should be working? And well, right now people still receive rewards even though it's 2022. So how did that work?
Well, there is two parts. There is a constant schedule of issuing Bitcoins. It started with, again, I always forget. I think it started with 25 or 50. 50 Bitcoin was the first subsidy. So it was 50 Bitcoins a block. And then the idea was that every 4 years, the halving event will happen, or halving, that people call it differently, when the subsidy will be reduced twice as much. So it was 50, then it was 25, and so on. Now I think we're at 6.25 or 3, whatever. The idea was that over time, the transaction fees will get better and better and more stable, so that miners won't have to rely on subsidy anymore. It also kind of helps to stabilize the Bitcoin price, because if you print too much money, Bitcoin loses value. So it's good to reduce the inflation over time in a predictable way. A big question right now is what happens in, I think it's 2140 years after whatever common era, because that's when the subsidy will be really low after all the halvenings are gone, and whether Bitcoin can survive just on transaction fees or not. Well, it probably can. The real question is what will be the new game for miners, because now there are some really cool tricks or cool problems where instead of mining for the subsidy, you can fork the latest block to steal the transaction from the latest block. It's a cool research problem, and people are talking, we don't know what will happen. There is no real answer. There are only theories. I think most of the people are generally positive about this, but yeah, there are open problems in this space for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about little bit about the some cool structures, some cool technical things like Merkle trees or like simple payment verification. These things also mentioned in Bitcoin white paper. Can you a little bit explain why we need Merkle tree, why we need simple payment verification? Does it work? Is it really secure, as was mentioned in the Bitcoin white paper?
Well, I think so. Merkle tree is just a way to connect a list of transactions to the proof of work. Basically, you collect all transactions in the Merkle tree, and then you have this root, and it's enough to hash over this root so that proof of work works as expected, so that you cannot, for example, produce proof of work in advance without knowing the transactions, and it just makes the incentives work. In that sense, it's not super fancy. It's just an necessary part to compress stuff into something authorized by proof of work. Then SPV, simple payment verification, I think, right?
Right.
It's just a trick to reduce the load on the nodes, and it helps to build wallets which don't consume too much energy. Every time you receive a block, how to make sure you got a transaction in it? Well, without SPV, you would just download all the transactions, which is 1 megabyte or more every 10 minutes, which, I mean, depends on where you operate, might be undesirable. For example, if you're a bridge to some other cryptocurrency, you wouldn't probably want all that memory into your transaction, basically. Instead, you can look at the Merkle root and see if a transaction by hash is included. So you get a block header, which is just proof of work and the Merkle root. And then somebody tells you, or the transaction I send you is in this block. So it's really easy without downloading the entire tree to see that your transaction is included. And that just allows to save a bunch of memory and verification. It's not 100%. It doesn't give the same security as full verification, but I think it's good enough for our talk today to just mention it this way. Yeah.
So you said that we need Merkle tree because we need to decrease the amount of data to send over a network if you only want to see only your transaction, not the full list of the full transaction on the current blockchain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, I mentioned the word blockchain, but if you try to read the Bitcoin white paper, you didn't find this word. I mean, why? Everyone talks about blockchain after this, after Bitcoin success, but this word didn't mention in the white paper. Why?
Yeah. Well, I think we shouldn't spend much time on the blockchain because it's just a memory structure. It's nothing fancy about it. I think proof of work it just became a marketing word to show some stupid startups to raise money and steal it and not deliver anything. So it's really, unfortunately, I try to not use, well, it's very natural to not to use it because when talking about Bitcoin, I better focus on saying money, on saying private or unconfiscatable or sovereign, and it doesn't matter what's behind it. I think this is a good red flag to see if somebody is talking shit or not. You just hear blockchain and then you kind of know that it's shit because it's not what matters. You don't care what operates inside your air conditioner. You just know that it works. And if somebody's selling you refrigerating whatever liquid. It's absolutely irrelevant.
All right, so whatever you just mentioned, let's elaborate a little bit on privacy, because Bitcoin is not anonymous in full regards. You technically, if you buy pizza with Bitcoin and then you buy weed with Bitcoin or drugs, whatever, you can technically link the person with these two transactions and you can figure out who did it. So yeah, can we talk a little bit about privacy and what goes into it?
On this topic, I really like to split it in two parts. First is connecting a cryptocurrency to a real world event. For example, if you exchange Bitcoin into your credit card money, then, well, it's obvious who did this because the credit card company has all the details about where the money came from and who receives it. So it's not, it cannot solve that problem in particular. It can only allow this kind of a black market of, it makes it kind of harder for them to go after every pizza company and asking them to dox a user and tell them who that was, as opposed to, I don't know, a handful of banks which have a KYC officer or whatever bullshit they have. So that's a social change, and here every user can take their own effort to minimize what they're leaking while spending Bitcoin for real stuff. You can choose the counterparty you're spending with, or like choose the good guys, or choose just the shop which will not leak your data. So that's the real world part, and then there is the on-chain or in-protocol privacy, which matters too. I guess, yeah, it's true that in the Bitcoin you can see the steps every coin made after it's been printed, or after the Coinbase transaction, after the very last receiver. It's all pseudonyms, so it's just a chain of public keys, basically. Well, it's more advanced, but basically that. And there are protocols that address this part. I guess Bitcoin looks into this direction too, but they're changing so fast that it's not strictly good to take all the innovations and implement them right away, because they get hacked, and then all the privacy is not private anymore. By the way, they usually touch on the one aspect of privacy, what happens in the history of transactions. But then there is also the IP address of a node you're spending from, or the amount of change every transaction takes, and that stuff. So basically, yeah, it gets more nuanced after this, but yeah, I think I like to split it in these two aspects.
I think there is a simple mistake, because people who think about Bitcoin, they start reading, for example, the white paper, and they found these things like these words which you can find like keeping public keys anonymous in the Bitcoin white paper, and everyone starts thinking that this is anonymous. So like if you can see like the evolution of like media, what media talk about Bitcoin, like 10 years ago it was like Bitcoin totally anonymous. Like 5 years ago, like Bitcoin is pseudonymous. For now, I think there is like consensus that everyone understands what's going on inside blockchain, inside Bitcoin blockchain, and everyone like know what exactly happened here, and there is no privacy. And the pseudonymous like things, it's not like really something that you can really assume, because like there is a like company like Chainalysis, like other company like the Bitfury product. I didn't remember exactly the name of this product. How we call it? Crystal. I think this is a crystal. Yeah. And what do you think? Is it really? I mean, like, is it really danger for the Bitcoin users that everyone understands for now, that everyone knows what really happened and what you do with your Bitcoin?
Well, this is really cool part where we first will mention that Bitcoin doesn't have a company behind it. So there is nobody really responsible for explaining how private is Bitcoin. It's really a non-trivial question, how private is Bitcoin. But I mean, I do my best when telling this to my friends. When I'm suggesting them use Bitcoin, but then I'm saying, for you, the most risky part is connecting to the real world, for example. So don't spend it into a credit card if you want full privacy or more privacy. Still, some 3-letter agencies might figure out that you spend Bitcoin this way, but your local 3-letter agencies are probably not qualified enough to figure that out. So it's every time, I think it's the responsibility of individual users, and you put your own reputation at stake. If you suggested Bitcoin to somebody and then the police came after them, well, your problem. But it's really cool that there is the company which is supposed to do this.
Okay, well, even though they have no company and no legal entity every time, like at least when I advise cryptocurrency, I put a legal disclaimer that this is not a financial advice, use at your own risk and things like that, worth every time. And again, it very much depends on what they do with Bitcoin. Like buying pizza is okay, even with Bitcoin or with credit card, doesn't matter. It's when you're not doing legal things that it becomes so. All right, let's talk a little bit about, like, I don't know, maybe general economics. So if I'm a miner of Bitcoin, is it still makes sense to be a miner of Bitcoin? Will I gain enough rewards to cover my electricity at this moment, or does it not matter anymore to join in?
Mining is probably I'm least qualified to talk about this topic on anything. I know there are online calculators where you put your electricity cost, and then it just tells you how soon your miner will get profitable. So just, I think that formula is pretty simple. Then there is like, how much effort do you want to put into building up a facility? Because you gotta figure out how to cool it because it gets warm, or how to secure it after some robbers getting in. So it's a really non-trivial real world business mostly. Then some government decides that it's not legal to do this, or there is a blackout. So yeah, it's nothing really technical. It's more, DevOps kind of thing.
Right.
Infrastructure. Infrastructure. Economical, not in a philosophical way, but in a like real money, real business stuff.
You mentioned that it's just simple formula when you have like price of electricity, when you have like and you have price of the hardware, and you can calculate your profits or your losses. But like usually we have like more or less in our world we have more or less two types of the countries, like democracy and like some authoritarian countries, and something in between of these things. And usually the democracy do not like to subsidize some things like food, like electricity, but the authoritarian country, they really like to say, okay, you can buy the gas by like 1 cent, or like you can buy electricity really, really cheap and we will subsidize it. Do you think that there is a let's say like political risk around it, around censorship, because like there is an authoritarian country who subsidize the electricity, and miners say, okay, here is a cheap electricity, I want to go to the to country like Iran and try to mine my Bitcoin in Iran because the electricity is really cheap in Iran. But it gives really big power to Iran government to control Bitcoin. Do you think this risk is viable?
Well, when thinking about risks, I really like to compare it to other systems and to other ways of building it. I honestly, well, first of all, I don't think the subsidy of resources or mining and the regime is the same thing. I think, for example, I don't know. I think Canada has a lot of excess electricity resources. They're just socialists, which I don't know, stupid to not take money for free from the floor for some political reasons or whatever. So it's just a funny. It's a non-trivial historic or political relation between these two aspects. That's first part. Now, getting back to my original point, I'm not sure we have a better way of building this. So there is certainly there is a non-zero risk that Bitcoin mining can be captured by some bad actors, and then they can, I don't know, mine empty blocks, for example, or censor some transactions or something else. It's certainly not zero. Now, whether we can build something more reliable, I don't know any better idea yet.
By the way, related to the incentives, to the controlling of Bitcoin, what do you think about the selfish mining? Because if you go to the Satoshi white paper, if you found the calculations of probability of splitting network, etc., you can see these naive calculations, but in reality the big amount of researchers put a lot of effort to really understand what the incentives of the miner, what is selfish mining, what's the weakness of the construction of economical construction of the incentives. What do you think? Is it important? Is it really risky?
We certainly found some new ideas of how Bitcoin incentives work since the white paper was published. There are nuances which I think are not 100% correct in the white paper, especially connected to the incentives and the calculation he did there. Now, I mean, I think it's good that we're making some progress along that direction. I don't think anything of that killed Bitcoin in any remote way. We just know something better than before, basically. If Bitcoin is done, I wouldn't work on it. So, yeah.
But please explain to our listener a little bit what is selfish mining, why it's important.
I think about maybe 6 years ago, somebody uncovered a non-trivial strategy to attack Bitcoin. Well, the original idea was that if 51% or more than half of miners cooperate to do something, now it's always hard to formulate, if it is dishonest or it is irrational. So if more than half of miners get together and start working on a common goal of killing Bitcoin, they can achieve it. So that was the original idea, that as long as that doesn't happen, Bitcoin is fine. Now, selfish mining paper tried to come up with some more sophisticated strategy than just competing in the Bitcoin histories where the majority will win, and achieved some dangerous results with less than 50% of the hash rate of all the miners. I remember that the paper is inaccurate in some way, where paper assumes, I think, that the longest chain is the best, meaning number of blocks, while it's actually the amount of work, because what really matters is how many hashes you put into the blockchain. But it still it gave us some cool new ideas. Well, I think the paper actually took it from the Bitcoin Talk forum first, but yeah, whatever. I think it's a pretty cool example of how the science behind Bitcoin was advancing.
Okay, I hope in the future we will talk with in this podcast with Emir Günşerer, and we will ask deeply about the selfish mining. But for people who listen to us for now, I just say like just Google what is selfish mining is and read the first paper, and you will have really good experience of understanding not only in the Bitcoin itself, but in game theory also, because it's really one of the example of the practical implementation of the theoretical things like game theory. Paulina?
Yeah, so Bitcoin has been on the stage for about 14 years now, right? Since 2008, it's 2022 right now. So what are the concepts that were completely right in the white paper from the first time, like blockchain, for example? And what are the things that were like severely changed since then and still are having an ongoing change? And it's something that everybody looks forward to being resolved.
You know, over our episode, I always try to link the software stuff to some politics, meaning you want to build something secure, you want to build like this decentralized money. With your question, I'm not sure how to do this. You know, there's a lot of technical details, and most of the technical details from the white paper remained in place, or not even the white paper. You know, I think the original, for example, Bitcoin script, the language which expresses the rules to how coins is spent. Because, for example, when I send you money, I really send money to the script saying this public key can spend it, but only after a year, for example. Mm-hmm. And that's really what happens when I make a transaction. So that concept is still pretty cool. I'm not saying it's the best language for programming these rules, but it achieves pretty cool scalability, and that's what helped Bitcoin to not go into cloud, but operate on cheap machines and on easy laptops and not cost a lot, and really allow decentralization so that there is no gateway which filters out transactions in Bitcoin and allows to spend on the certain users which did KYC. So that concept is pretty cool and still alone from the original times. The peer-to-peer stuff, I think it's mostly the ideas that everybody should be able to send the transaction to the network, while the internals were very much changed since then, and there was a big progress. The proof of work is mostly in place. Well, the stuff we discussed, we kind of uncover new things. We uncover these questions. What will happen when there is no fee, or there is no subsidy and stuff? But I think it's mainly going through the research phase. Then, I don't know, SPV is still kind of used especially in the layer 2 protocols like Lightning, where they use it to make nodes cheaper. Yeah, so it's really depending on the topic.
Can you tell just a couple words about Lightning, just for context? What is Lightning and how does it work? A couple sentences.
Lightning is a protocol which helps which moves the transfer of value from everybody checks every transaction to we have a 2 people ledger instead. So me and you, for example, lock 1 Bitcoin, and then we just track that every time I buy a beer from you, I transfer money to you and authorize this. So that not everybody in the network has to know about it, but it's just a state kept between us. It's pretty cool because it allows transactions to be instant and not wait at least 10 minutes to mine a block, that nobody sees this transaction until some time in the later when they have to spend it somewhere else. It doesn't blow the blockchain with extra memory. So yeah, it's like a new way of transacting with different trade-offs.
Few minutes ago, you mentioned about Bitcoin script. if you try to read Bitcoin white paper, you didn't find this word. What is Bitcoin script? I mean, like, I think there is some very big misunderstanding because, like, people think that, like, Ethereum invent the smart contracts because you cannot find Bitcoin script, all of this stuff inside the Bitcoin white paper. And so I have two questions. First question: what is Bitcoin script? And the second question: why Satoshi didn't mention it in the white paper?
Well, Bitcoin script is a programming language, which is really just a set of symbols and rules to define financial transactions, to define how the money are locked when you're spending them. It's a language consisting of a couple hundreds of expressions like check the current time, or check that the signature authorizes spend from the given public key, or some addition operation. So yeah, I don't know why it's not in the white paper. It's probably just some historic reasons. I think it might be that Satoshi first wrote the white paper and then figured out how to do Bitcoin script, because I think historically we have little evidences of how Bitcoin initial code was developing. And I think the Bitcoin script was added later, like at the very end. So white paper just could have been ready before that. But anyway, I wouldn't put too much conspiracy into why it's not in the white paper.
Okay. Related to the smart contracts and Bitcoin script, like, in my opinion, how it works in my non-Bitcoin maximalist way, the picture is like we have like Bitcoin script, very ugly, very counterintuitive, because this inputs, outputs, all of this stuff, it's really counterintuitive, in my opinion. Like, when some developers seen it in the first time, he say, what's going on? After that, we have like evolution, the Ethereum virtual machine, which much more understandable, much more useful, Turing complete. And over it, we have like some snark and stark and zero knowledge virtual machines, which you can prove by using zero knowledge, the correctness of execution of these virtual machines. That's exactly what we try to build in ZK Sync. What is it, in your opinion? Is it image correct, or what? How you can react on this, like, on this mindset?
Oh, I think you can make a talk with this subject, with your vision of it, but it's not enough. The point you just made is pretty much ideological, I think, or it's descriptive. It doesn't talk about real things. So we need to identify, when you say evolution, you probably refer to some properties being better and better. First, we would want to identify those properties. For example, one property that interests me is that if you can build smart contracts securely on top of the language you provide. For example, you can see how much value was transferred in Bitcoin over last year and which fraction of that money was stolen. And then you look at Ethereum and see how much value was transferred there and which fraction of it was stolen. So that's just an idea of one example of what could be measured to see if this is an evolution or degradation or whatever, or maybe a different fork. So that's one property. You can suggest something different.
Our listeners can go to the website, which is called rect.news, and click to the word leaderboard, and I click it right now, and I see Ronin Network, BNB Bridge, Poly Network, Wormhole, Bitmart, Nomad Bridge. What do you think? Is it Bitcoin script, Gleb?
I don't. I honestly don't remember any smart contract on Bitcoin which was hacked. Well, there was bugs in the Bitcoin consensus a couple of times where somebody could have printed more Bitcoin, never did, but it was possible at some point. But it's different. Now we're talking about Bitcoin script. It is limited. It sometimes leads to bugs. We even had we had a bug in Lightning protocol last month, but it was not even related to script. It was just stupid. Somebody made it too big transactions and half of nodes went down because they couldn't process it. So it's not even about that. Here we are talking about straight up stealing money because the contract was written in a difficult way and nobody could have audited it. So that's just in that sense, I think Bitcoin is better. Maybe it is less powerful, of course, but I'm saying to answer this question, we really should identify those properties first and then talk about them.
Okay, last things related to the Bitcoin script and all of language. Is it possible, in your opinion, to have in the future to have the to have something which can some virtual machine which was written on the snarks on Starks inside Bitcoin, that you can prove like correctness of the execution in the zero knowledge and put really big amount of execution inside Bitcoin script or something like new version of Bitcoin script when you can prove like very big batch of the signatures or the big batch of some like logical transformation or Merkle tree manipulation, etc.
You know, I have this new idea over the last couple weeks. I mean, it's not new in a design space, but it's just my own new kind of intuition. I really hope that all these fancier contracts will happen somewhere else. For example, on the peer-to-peer level of Bitcoin, between you and me, for example, and not necessarily we shouldn't force everybody running Bitcoin to check our sophisticated financial transactions. So I really hope, I think Bitcoin layer is pretty much good enough to facilitate this stuff. But the sophisticated contracts have to happen between us, so they basically have to be timestamped into Bitcoin or linked somehow, but not necessarily, we shouldn't force everybody to check them. So I'm saying maybe doing some semi-centralized things or experimenting with different layers to Bitcoin, like Lightning, where you can do cool stuff. You can even have other assets in Lightning, but somehow operating on top of Bitcoin. I think that's the direction we should take more attention, basically.
Do you know that there is our Bitcoin Halloween? It's a day when the Bitcoin white paper was published and we'll celebrate it. Do you celebrate it, Gleb?
I think it was a pretty cool party last year. We gathered with the Bitcoin community in Kiev and we had a big party. Everybody was wearing fancy dresses and all that stuff. I don't have plans for this year because it's kind of harder to get together, but maybe somebody makes it. I'm looking forward to joining something this year, but I haven't seen anything yet. It's pretty cool.
It's not really obvious if the party will happen this year because, as many of you may know, Ukraine is at a state of war with Russia, and Russia is a terrorist state, and it is very lucky that actually Gleb has this light on and has internet working because Russia has been bombing some of the electric facilities in Kiev very recently, and the only way to fight Russian terror is donate to Ukrainian army. So that's what we very, very ask you to do, is go to savelife.in.ua/donate and donate some cryptocurrency to help Ukrainian military to fight the Russian aggressor. and to protect our country and the whole Europe.
And you can donate using Bitcoin, using Ethereum, using your C20 tokens in Ethereum, like stable coins. So I will really appreciate if you will do it. Paulina?
All right. And thanks everyone for listening. Please subscribe to all our channels in YouTube if you're actually watching us, in Spotify, in Google Play or Apple Podcast. Stay tuned for a new podcast starting soon. Thanks everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks Gleb for talking to us this nice day. All right. Bye.
Goodbye everyone. Thanks Gleb. Thanks.